Good evening and welcome to the City of Dublin Planning and Zoning Commission. You can join the meeting in person at 5555 Perimeter Drive or access the meeting via the live stream on the city's website. We welcome public participation to the greatest extent possible. At this time, if you'll please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ms. Beal, welcome this evening. I'll turn it over to you for a roll call, please.
Mr. Supelak?
Here.
Mr. Way?
Here.
Mr. Fishman?
Here.
Ms. Harder? Here. Mr. Schneier?
Here.
Ms. Call?
Here. Thank you, Ms. Beal. We have minutes from the July, I'm pretty sure it's not the July 9th meeting, maybe the June 9th meeting, for acceptance along with the documents into the record. I'll entertain a motion for such.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Way. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Harder. Ms. Beal.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Beal. The Planning and Zoning Commission is an advisory board to City Council when rezoning and platting of property are under consideration. In such cases, City Council receives a recommendation from the Commission. In other cases, the Commission has the final decision-making responsibility. Anyone who intends to address the Commission on any of these administrative cases must be sworn in. The meeting agenda is typically determined at the beginning of the meeting by the chair. The rules and regulations of the Planning and Zoning Commission state that no new agenda items are to be introduced after 10:30 p.m. Anyone intending to address the Commission on any of these administrative cases, will you please stand, raise your right hand, and answer in the affirmative. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony to this Commission? Thank you all. This morning we will go in agenda order. And so it looks like we have an informal case up first, 4444 Tuller Road, case 22-070 INF, an informal review. This application is a request for a multifamily development consisting of 142 units with 192 parking spaces. The approximately 3.18 acre site is zoned Bridge Street District Office Residential and is located northeast of the intersection of Riverside Drive with Tuller Road. Ms. Martin, I will turn the time over to you for our staff presentation, after which we will hear an applicant presentation.
Great, good evening. As mentioned, this is a request for informal review and non-binding feedback. The site is just over 3 acres in size and is comprised of 2 parcels located immediately south of Interstate I-270, east of Riverside Drive, and north of Tuller Road. The site is immediately adjacent to an existing animal care hospital located at the intersection of Riverside Drive and Tuller Road, and is north of the Grand Senior Living Facility and adjacent to existing industrial buildings. The site is located within the Bridge Street District. As such, development follows a 3-step process identified on the screen. The informal review stage is optional, and in this case is an opportunity to inform the project at an early stage. So the existing conditions of the site are depicted here on the screen, with the photo on the left being along Riverside Drive. You can see an existing tree stand as well as significant grade change as we move from west to east on the site. The western parcel has an existing wireless facility located on it, which is proposed to remain with this application. The eastern parcel today contains an existing single-family home, which is proposed to be removed. There are 2 existing curb cuts for the site, which are proposed to be reconfigured with this application. In more detail, here are the accessory structures associated with the wireless facility. And you can see in photo 6, the significant change in grade along Tuller Road as you head toward the east. So as identified in the staff report, the property is zoned Bridge Street District Office Residential. Each zoning district within the Bridge Street District accommodates a mix of uses, however, targets that mix of uses in a unique way. In this zoning district, office is intended to take advantage of visibility and access from the highway, but also there is an opportunity to accommodate residential neighborhoods that are supporting surrounding office and other commercial uses within the district. A conceptual site plan has been included for the Commission's consideration this evening. The applicant is proposing to develop 142 multifamily dwelling units, which will be a combination of 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, and convertible units, which are similar to studio units, although have flex space. Additionally, there will be 192 parking spaces. The parking spaces include surface parking located to the north, east, and west of the building, as well as lower level parking, which is accessible along the west access drive, and tuck under parking, which is along the east side of the building. The footprint of the building is a U shape sited along Tuller Road with open space forward of the building. Private amenity space is proposed within the U to create views toward the Scioto River. Approximately 30,000 square feet of open space area are proposed to be preserved along Riverside Drive as a naturalized area where you can see a leisure path depicted. Additionally, conceptual architectural character has been provided. You'll notice here the architecture is simple and refined in nature, but includes traditional forms in a modern way, predominantly clad in brick, as well as cementitious siding with metal accents. The first story of the building is proposed to contain active uses, including amenity space, co-working space, and fitness space. The southwest corner of the building is the proposed location for the leasing office. This location is at the future intersection of Tuller Road and Mooney Street. Mooney Street is proposed to be extended with future development. Staff has encouraged the applicant to revise this main entry to make it more prominent. Conceptual materials have also been selected at this point and are provided on the screen. The Commission is asked to consider whether the project is consistent with the intent of the zoning district, whether the Commission is supportive of the site layout, including the parking and open space locations, as well as connectivity. Specifically, the Commission is asked to consider the number of parking spaces as it exceeds the minimum number of spaces required by code and is located within the 50-foot I-270 buffer and would require a waiver. And finally, whether the Commission is supportive of the conceptual architectural character and proposed building materials. With that, the applicant is here this evening and they have their own presentation. Be happy to answer any questions for staff.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. And we will handle questions for staff and the applicant separately on this particular application, looking to the Commission for any questions for staff. Mr. Schneer.
Nikki, 2 questions.
Are the materials, there was a comment in the staff report about the white painted brick, but other than that, are the materials all approved?
So brick is a primary permitted material. Cementitious siding is a secondary material, as is metal panel. At this stage, we don't have enough information to evaluate whether those would be met, but these are materials that would be permitted in some fashion.
Okay, thank you. And second question, would you just comment on open space sort of definition? Specifically, is an area that's wooded, not necessarily accessible to most of it, the proposed area, how does that fit into our definitions of open space?
Yeah, so in the Bridge Street District, open space is required to be publicly accessible. Typically in the Bridge Street District, we see these open spaces amenitized and may be integrated within the development. In this case, this is the only instance I can think of where it's a naturalized, preserved area. So the numeric requirement for open space appears to be met. The question for the commission would be whether or not the location, the character, the quality, if those in your determination meet that intent.
And I apologize, I actually didn't go back and look at the code, which I can do now, but is the definition of open space that it be accessible? In other words, that space, would all of it be counted, even though most of it is not accessible other than to one's eye? Or would it just be the portion that there's sort of a proposed pathway through there?
Yeah, so I've not considered that at this point, whether or not there would only be a certain portion that would be counted versus not counted. The code very specifically says publicly accessible. So I think we would need to review and make a determination on what accessible means in this case.
We may call that a case of first impression here. We'll have to see.
Thank you, Mr. Schneer. Mr. Way?
Thank you. Could you explain a little bit more the 50-foot buffer from 270? I was looking for something on the drawings that defined where that was, and I can't really find it anywhere.
Yeah, so across Dublin along the I-270 corridor, there is a 50-foot setback requirement. In this case, the Bridge Street District would default to that setback requirement. There's a lot of existing development along this corridor that does not comply with that requirement, although any new development is required to, therefore a waiver would be required to that setback. The intent of that setback, and I think this is where I use the word buffer, is to provide a buffer from I-270 and to ideally screen development.
So does the 50 feet start at the right-of-way line for 270 and into the site?
Correct.
Correct. So it's all of the parking is in violation of that technically, because the parking is really pretty much going up to the property line.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so one of staff's preliminary comments was providing additional landscape area on site. Does it need to be the full 50 feet given the surrounding context? Maybe, maybe not. But the limited landscape buffer provided on site seems like an opportunity for revision.
Okay. I have a second question too. Is there a requirement to gain access around the entire perimeter of the building? Is there a fire lane? Again, I didn't see any documentation that a fire lane is being provided. Is it required?
So with any structure, obviously, fire has to be able to serve the building and navigate that. Given the preliminary stages, we've not seen any auto turn analysis that would indicate whether or not this site functions to their level of need We did reach out to the fire chief, and it is his preference that the site circulate as depicted on the screen. From a planning standpoint, there are some challenges with that, but the grade change really necessitates these flat mounting zones to fight a fire, since you couldn't fight it from taller.
And Nikki, you are not currently presenting, so I don't know if you were referencing
sorry.
something on screen at that point.
So in addition to the fact that they have parking surrounding the building on two sides, that's also fire lane access too. It's not just parking, but it's also fire lane access, regardless of whether it functions right now. But
Correct.
that's the
yes.
intent. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Way. Ms. Harder.
Yes, was there any indication for a need for a noise study or a traffic study, just because of the closeness to 270 as well as Riverside, and then just access to getting out in the morning using that road? Thank you.
So when the Bridge Street District was originally zoned, a comprehensive traffic study was performed. So properties proposed to be developed with a permitted use at a permitted building height are not required to do additional study of traffic, because if we successfully implement the street network, it would accommodate that additional traffic. So that is how that is resolved. The code doesn't contemplate a noise study. So we've not had that conversation.
Other questions for staff from the commission at this time? Mr. Fishman.
To play off to Mr. Schneer's question about the green space, the open area, I think in that area, am I correct that we've tried to make open area accessible to public, as Mr. Schneer said? Are there any plans for that area for paths or anything like that? I didn't see them.
So conceptually, the applicant is showing a path.
So one path through the property. Yeah,
Correct.
that's it. Right? The other question I have is parking. We've got a lot of surface parking here, and we've got 2 and 3 bedroom and several uses. Does that I assume that meets code right now, right?
Yes, the parking exceeds the minimum, but is below the maximum.
Okay. So it just barely meets code is what you're saying.
It exceeds code by about 20 spaces.
Okay.
Just one question. The wood look accent, and I can direct this to the applicant if need be, is that a wood look metal, or is that a wood look like our Nichiha or that type of material that we've seen in the past?
Yeah, I'm not able to answer that question
Okay,
at this time.
we'll direct that one to the applicant. Thank you. Final questions for staff? Seeing none. Is the applicant in attendance? Welcome. If you come up, our microphone here, if we need to make sure that the green light is on, that button likes to play favorites, I think. So we'd invite you up. Please state your name and address for the record. Sorry, if you could touch the button there to turn the green light. We're on. You're good.
Hello. Good evening. My name is Dan Gore. I work with the Pizzuti Companies, and our address is 629 High Street in Columbus, Ohio. I am a resident of Dublin as well. We have with me tonight Tony from MKSK and Tim, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, Tony Rell with MKSK. Our address is 462 South Ludlow in Columbus.
Hello, I'm Tim Donahue. I'm with MA Designs, and our address is 775 Yard Street, Columbus, Ohio, 43212.
Welcome. Did you have a statement or a presentation that you'd like to make this evening to the commission?
Sure, I could just make a brief statement and thank the commission for their time tonight, and we look forward to your comments. We're here at an early phase. We've done work in Dublin in the past, but are very excited to be here again and look forward to working with you all arm in arm to a successful project. So thank you.
Are we able to show the presentation? Thank you very much. As we've discussed, 444 Teller is located between 270 and Teller and abuts Riverside Drive, highlighted in green on the screen, abutting the animal care facility and the office space on the east. As we're zooming in, a couple items to discuss here. The landscape zone that we're talking about along 270 has a pretty robust buffer today of screening and existing trees and vegetation that creates an opaque screen in the existing condition. As we're looking at Teller, when we're looking at that street section, there's the existing bike path on the south side, and then on the north side of Teller today, the streetscape does not include any existing pathways or sidewalks due to the overhead power lines and the grade change that exists on the site today. And then we've also talked about the previously mentioned by staff, the cell tower and accessory buildings that exist between our site and the existing animal care facility. As we're looking at the site design here, you can see the building surrounds a residential courtyard that the units will face on, passive recreation space for the tenants. We've also got vehicular access with the two existing reconfigured curb cuts, both of which line up across the street, one with the Mooney extension and the eastern one with the Grand of Dublin driveway. That vehicular pathway around the building, as mentioned before, serves for fire access as well as parking access. As we're looking at the pedestrian connections, we're showing in pink a pedestrian connection that would come off of the Mooney Street drive entry that would tie into the main entries to the building as well as provide access to the parking lots. You also see that pink extension carrying through the landscape zone that was discussed earlier that connects over to Riverside Drive. There's a pretty significant grade change through there. So the switchback that is shown is starting to illustrate that pathway needs to go back and forth to kind of help us maintain grade and provide a more usable path slope. And then as we're looking at the design along Teller, what we're including here is a tree lawn. We're including a sidewalk that doesn't, that kind of just is the extent of our property as they don't exist at either side. And then along the building face, we're showing some terrace landscape that'll be further refined as the building moves forward. But again, that is helping us transition grade as we have 7 feet of grade change basically between the driveways on the site. I think if you go to the next one, please. Back to. Perfect, thank you. As we're looking at this, we just wanted to illustrate some of the grade change that is happening here. We basically have about 5 feet of grade change at each side of our property, as well as 7 feet of grade change that occurs along our property. So as we're looking at our neighbors, there's some grade change there that limits the amount of connectivity that we can have, as well as the amount of connectivity when we're coming out of the building. We have to be very careful, hence some of the terracing that we were looking at.
Thank you. If you could go back to the plan, please. So when we started this design, part of our intention was to kind of capture the differential in the grades because it slopes from the east to the west, but also kind of from the northeast down to the southwest. So we were able to use that to kind of capture some underground parking, but also to kind of help accent the building. So what we did is, as the grades slope from east to west, we also set the building back a little bit farther to create some interesting terraces, but also allows our access from the terrace to the next terrace down. The terraces have not totally been defined yet, but the idea is to kind of create some kind of public amenity to really kind of differentiate our project, but also to try to fit in along the streetscape there. With the corners being prominent, which also helps by pulling back the center portion to kind of really help define the entries, but also to kind of help define the streetscape along Teller Road. The other thing along, if you could go to the elevation, please. Yeah, the other thing that we did is, as you get to the left-hand side of this elevation, we have, additional 6 feet, which really kind of makes that corner piece feel very commercial. We're intending to put a lot of glass there. It's intended to be our clubhouse and the leasing office. There's going to be a plaza kind of out in front of it, but then we also have an area that's kind of recessed where we have the parapet roof to the right of that. That's going to be we're intending to have, our aspiration is to be a little pocket park, to be kind of an amenity for the clubhouse, but also amenity for the community. And then as you step up, the next level, which has slightly lower ceilings, would be our fitness. And then finally, on the far right-hand portion is a co-working space. So the 2 corners are very visible and have the most public function, with the fitness area being pushed back with some privacy for the people working out. The architecture, we really kind of wanted to make a statement at that corner of Mooney and Teller Road. So we had, the other 2 portions are gabled roofs, but they're turned so that the gable is parallel to the road, with then the corner of Mooney and Teller kind of having it perpendicular, kind of making it a very prominent piece that it's at that corner of that intersection, the future intersection there. And then if you could actually go back to the plan, please, or yeah, the plan actually. Then with staff, we had a lot of discussions about trying to terminate that axis. One of the things we've done is we've taken and turned that back leg of the building so that kind of helps shield and kind of provide something in the distance to kind of help terminate that vista. And also we have the tree canopy behind it, which is going to be very dense. The other thing, we pushed the building out kind of as far as we could. One, to kind of capture as much interior courtyard space to create an amenity solely for the residents, to kind of have their own kind of little private space, which is elevated over a parking garage underground there. We are also going to have some bike parking underneath there in the garage that will be secured for the residents. We are also planning some additional, per the code, additional site parking, probably along the front plaza area. And then on the kind of right-hand side, we have the tuck under parking, which kind of takes you back. Our view is that those lower level units, if they were units, they wouldn't have great views, and especially looking at the side of an office building and having a drive aisle there. Part of the reason we kind of did tuck under 2 is to kind of extend that frontage to try to create a continuous facade along Teller Road. You could go to the 3D, please. So, yes. So our material palette is kind of a white tone brick with some specks of darker colors in it and kind of a neutral kind of mortar. The mortar shown in that image is more rusticated than what we would do. We would do kind of a more finished kind of mortar. And then the lower portion of the brick is kind of almost kind of inverse of that, is a darker brick with some lighter specks in it. They kind of tie into each other. The area, one of the questions of the wood accent is the product we're looking at right now is the Nijiha siding, but there are some other options that we are looking at. And then our intention is to kind of look at some kind of shingle. It might be asphalt, but we kind of want it to look like a synthetic kind of slate material. So, we also kind of broke up the roof line. We've kind of popped up the some of the balcony areas or some of the more prominent living room areas with these kind of framed dormers, and trying to create trying to break up that horizontal line, but also trying to create some interest and keep it kind of a more modern aesthetic along that facade. So, if you can go to the next page. This is just showing the corner of the Peller and Mooney Street, and just how we're kind of picturing a plaza in that corner that would probably be a little more integrated with the sidewalk, but just something that's very prominent and a focal point there. And then you can kind of see how some preliminary site massing of this terracing up the hill. Next page.
Yeah, I don't know if it's frozen or, sorry.
Oh, that is it. So,
Okay.
so that's our presentation.
Are there any questions?
Questions from the commission? Mr. Schneer.
Thank you for that. Two questions. The choice of the materials, the choice of the white brick, that's just a design element that you just felt complemented the darker colors. Any insight into that? Or
one of the reasons we kind of chose the white brick was one, we kind of wanted a kind of more clean, modern kind of aesthetic. We also felt that it kind of started to tie into the kind of limestone and stone in the area and kind of picked up that aesthetic without actually being stone.
Okay, thank you. And then with regard to parking, I assume, or I guess shouldn't assume, ask the question, the number of parking spaces, both surface and underground, are a function of your determination of how many cars per unit, or?
That's right. It's driven by the market studies we've done to this point and understanding the needs of the renter. So it's right now we're about 1.35 parking spaces per unit. Ideally, we'd like to be a little more than that, but we'd also like to preserve, some of the green space and the quality of the site as well. So it's been a balancing act to find that happy.
How does the 1.35, let's see, what would be the average number of bedrooms then? So you have 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms, right?
I believe we have like 19 of the kind of convertible, 81 of the bedrooms, and
So it's 81 1-bedrooms, 39 2-bedrooms, and 3 3-bedrooms. And then the 19 convertible units.
So the average is?
A 1-bedroom is the most numerous unit type.
The median, not the mode, yeah, the median is 2-ish. Yeah, I could do the math, but yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question on the parking? So our staff report has, 192 parking spaces, but when I look in the particulars, you show 123, and I went through and counted the little squares and that matches. 123 surface with 53 lower, which gives us 176. 173 is our minimum, so it's still within standard. But can you confirm, was there a previous plan that maybe had 192?
Did
So
you
it's the
include the
six-
tuck under parking as well?
Yeah, it's tuck under.
Yeah, the tuck under there. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions for the applicant? Mr. Way.
I'm sure that you studied this site all different ways. And I was just curious, back, if this is kind of a parking open space related question, is that you've basically come up with a building configuration, and then the rest of the site, kind of the usable site, is parking. I just wondered, have you thought of making the footprint of the building bigger and having less surface parking and putting more parking underneath the building? Because there's an unexcavated part, right? You're saying you're using the grade, but you could excavate the entire footprint of this and get more parking underneath, which would then free up surface parking. Is that correct? There's two questions in there, really. It was, did you look at other options, and then could you expand? I'm trying to expand the parking under the building. That's my question to you. Had you explored that both by increasing the footprint of the building and really using all of the space under the building for parking?
We did, and actually we have a soils report, and part of the soils report is I'm not a geologist, so I don't remember the exact terms, but there's basically some very, very hard stone at a certain level. As you go kind of further to the west, it gets closer to the surface. As you get kind of moved to the west, there is some area of kind of soil or rock that is easier kind of to work with. So we were kind of trying to work within that so that we didn't have to go try to blast the hard stone out. So it's kind of partially a cost issue. So it's kind of a balance. We were trying to work with the surface or with the topo and the soils conditions. And so that's why we ended up kind of stopping the garage where we did.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Way. Mr. Fishman.
I assume a convertible unit is a unit that a room can be used as a bedroom or not as a bedroom and get another person in. Is that?
It's a bit of a hybrid between a one bedroom and a studio unit. So where a studio is all one large space typically, the convertible might have an alcove that's used for the bed, but it feels open and more lofty like the studio. So it's really a hybrid between the one bedroom and the studio, if that answers your question.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess.
A bedroom without walls.
Okay, I'm still working on the parking. If everybody that rents the space is an adult, and you get the max amount of people per unit, we're going to be short of parking, and that concerns me. But I also am not crazy about the sea of parking around the building. So I kind of agree with my colleague that if you have a lower building and you can put more, I know you said blasting and so on is a problem, but maybe move it around a little bit. I'm just giving my input that we could get more under building parking.
Part of the other issue too is we can't really go too much farther south because that would then kind of interfere with having commercial space or the kind of aesthetic of a commercial space along that front there.
Yeah, that was kind of my worry, is the commercial space too. You're going to have people coming in that need to park to participate in the commercial space. And so that's why I think we're a little short. But on the other hand, I think your design is really great, except that maybe it's too many units for the space. And if we lowered the units a few, then we'd have more space and we'd have less sea of parking. So my input is like make it a little smaller, less units. I know you don't want to do that, but you know, but it's to make it a great project, I think.
Other questions for the applicant? Ms. Harder.
I had a couple just about the materials that you're using. Is it something that you have to keep up with, spray wash every year? Would you see elements coming from that that wouldn't look so nice after a certain time, discoloring? And maybe, you know, I keep hearing the word siding and so forth with that too.
This is probably a question for the architect, but as a developer, I would say that we're looking at the long-term, ownership of this property, want it to maintain and hold up well over time. Our material choices are based and informed on that. So brick being a permanent material, a great building material. Same thing with the type of siding. The final product we would select would be a durable one, but also one we would maintain throughout the life of the project. So.
One other question about the roof. Have you considered using solar panels where you can use them as shingles, where they're just a part of a shingle? It seems new to us, and we just want to know I wanted to know if you were looking into those at all.
We continue to investigate that type of technology almost on every project that we're involved with in this state and others. It's not proven to be terribly cost effective, or the returns certainly aren't there just yet. But it's something we'll continue to investigate and bring forward as it becomes appropriate. So,
thank you.
Mr. Sublak.
At any point, did you entertain other uses other than residential on this site?
Tim, do you want to take that one? So I will say that I'm new to this development project. I'm picking this project up from another developer. So knowing the way that we do business, we always look at every opportunity. We really like this as a residential site, complementary to the higher, more active, intense use that you have on Bridge Park. So in our minds, I think too, we look at the amount of vacant office and whatnot that occurs up further east on Tuller, and believe that this is not only the highest and best use for the site, but it's a lovely site, I think, for residential as well, with some of the other residential buildings going in along Tuller. You've got the bike path there, you're close to the river. It feels like a very desirable place to live. So,
thank you.
Any final questions for the applicant? Ms. Harder.
I was just thinking about safety measures maybe you're looking into, and also that's the first thing, like getting someone across the street there, but also why is someone going to come over there and visit you all?
Well, there's a few questions there, I think. Let me start with the safety. So safety is always important. And for me as a father, I'm always thinking about, my kids or my niece or someone that I love living at a place that we develop and to build, and want to make sure that it's that type of safe place. So I'm always tracing the route from the parking lot to your front door and making sure that it's safe, it's well lit. And so I would think we'll meet and exceed the codes in that sense, from a safety standpoint. That's very important. And the other part of your question was?
Yeah, maybe, I'm sorry. Let me just start from the beginning on the second one. I'm thinking about if you are in another area and you're walking through that area, and what's going to spark the interest? What are they going to see besides your leasing office that's going to inspire them to, I want to go check out there and maybe find something interesting on your side? Thank you.
I think by putting a lot of the active uses along the street front, you'll notice we're quite a bit closer than most of the buildings that front Tuller currently. So we are trying to engage the street in a way. knowing that Tuller will change at some point in the future. We've talked to the staff, the city staff, about the future plans to maybe narrow Tuller and create a better, more pedestrian experience, one more in keeping with the rest of Bridge Park. So in many ways, we're trying to anticipate that, even though it's not there currently. So we'll work really closely with the team to create a gestalt, a logic for how that can begin to unfold as it moves east and west on the site as well. So I think those active uses, I think with the use of art, we bring art to every one of our projects, both interior and exterior. Artwork is an important part of what we do and how we make our properties special and unique. And so, the artwork, the courtyards, these terraces are in a way designed to be, to feel a little more residential perhaps than one would experience in the heart of Bridge Park, where it's hardscape right up to the buildings. And, the buildings meet that raw edge. Here we've got a little bit of that green lawn space that Tony referenced earlier that I just think helps blend it between what's happening already residentially further down Tuller to the east, and then what's happening in the heart of Bridge Park. Does that answer the question? Okay, thank you.
Any final questions for the applicant or for staff? I do want to clarify, I want to read two parts of code, and then we will give you an opportunity to make final statement before we enter in deliberations. So a couple of items that were highlighted were the use in this area. So I do want to quote, and Nikki, Ms. Martin hit on this in her case presentation when it comes to the types of uses in this particular BSD office residential. The intent of this district is to accommodate a mix of office and multiple family residential development at higher densities and in larger buildings. The district offers great flexibility to take advantage of visibility and access for office uses, with opportunities to create residential neighborhoods to support adjacent BSD zoning districts. And I'll truncate there. And then the other one is back to Mr. Schneer with open space. In, again, the BSD code, this is open space type section 153.064. The intent of the open space type requirements is to ensure a variety of functional, well-designed open spaces carefully distributed throughout the Bridge Street district, located and planned to enhance the quality of life for residents, businesses, and visitors. The purpose of these requirements is to ensure that individual open space complement adjacent land uses and contribute to the creation of a comprehensive district-wide open space network. In addition, these regulations are intended to guide the design of each open space so that it properly responds to its unique location and the needs of the primary users. So I wanted to make sure we had that on the record and that you had an opportunity to make any last statement prior to the commission's deliberations this evening.
One of the things that we kind of had looked at with the open space is that we have kind of these more formal kind of front plazas that are kind of more public. Then we have kind of the semi-private residence areas. And then we were trying to provide something that's a little more unique. We've got, there's a lot of topo from the edge of the parking lot down to Riverside. So we were trying to figure out something that would kind of be different from the rest of it, but also kind of so you can get away from kind of the urbanness of a lot of the development in the area and kind of have that kind of peaceful, tranquil kind of environment with kind of more back to kind of nature. But it also allows us to help kind of screen some of the noise and the visual of 270. Yeah.
And I would just like to add a comment about the density and the parking. I know those are both really important topics. And it's a challenging one for all of us to wrestle with, I think, because on one hand, the Bridge Street plan, it calls for higher density. And on the other, we want to balance our parking demands with that density. And so striking the right balance is really kind of the challenge. And so we think the 4-story building feels correct in this location, knowing that as one moves further to the east, things begin to step down into 3-story, 2-story, 1-story, et cetera. And then as you move to the west, we would anticipate a really significant gateway piece at the corner there of Tuller and Riverside Drive that may have even, greater height and density that meets and matches and is complementary to the rest of Bridge Park. So it's really been incumbent upon us to try to find a way to make that balance, to anticipate not only with the development that's there, but what will come in the future. And that's how we've tried to approach it. So our parking counts that we are offering today are, between the minimum and the maximum. We're trying to make sure we get it right. We absolutely do not want to be a community that is underparked and underserved in that sense. So, we'll look at every opportunity to make sure we strike that balance, and we hear you loud and clear. I think the issues you're bringing up today are ones that we're, particularly aware of and sensitive to as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Martin, have we received any public comment on this item? Is anyone here in attendance wishing to speak on this particular application? Seeing none, thank you, gentlemen. We are going to enter into deliberation. Mr. Schneer, if I could ask you to start us off this evening.
Thank you. A couple comments. I think it's a very well thought out design, and that area poses some challenges. And I think you've done a great job in addressing them. With respect to the parking, I did try to do some math, and it looks like you have 187 bedrooms and you have 192 parking spaces. So it would appear on one hand that, if my math is correct, that every adult, if you will, is accommodated. But that being said, I think I share some my fellow commissioners' comments or concerns that there's just a lot of surface parking, and it just dwarfs what otherwise has an incredible sort of bucolic sort of scene. So I'm torn between the number of parking spaces, and the easy fix would be, okay, you need those spaces, clearly, stick them underground. That's just a comment that that I would share. With respect to the open space and the chairperson's recitation of the code, there does not appear to be any place in the code that says that open space has to be physically accessible, at least and it even talks about past, active, and passive. So if I would read passive as meaning like you could look at it and not. So in theory, I mean, I'm not making I'm stating a fact. I'm actually not necessarily stating an opinion or point of view, but in theory, that area that is bisected or transversed by the little pathway, in theory, I read it that the whole area could count towards open space, even though to get there, you got to sort of go off road. You're dodging trees, etc. That's just the cursory. I'm not saying that that's the way we should. That doesn't mean we have to interpret it necessarily quite that way, but I think the code would, to my previous question, could count all that space towards the definition of open space, even though you can practically only sort of look at it and not get there because it's a sea of trees. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Schneer. Mr. Supelak, could I have you up next, please?
There's a lot of good work here. You guys have carefully done some good designing, right? The building's attractive. The layout is largely well thought out, savvy coordination of the slope and the grades, right? I specifically appreciate what you're trying to do with the terracing on the taller roadside. I do think there's, you know, even some of the things like the open space, right? It's early. The path could be any number of things. I'm sure we could get there. And yeah, is surface parking a little bit much? Probably. It's a little bit overbuilt. All that said, I struggle fundamentally with one thing, and that is residential adjacent, specifically facing the highway. And I know there's a pretty substantial green berm there, but it's still residential facing the highway. And historically, Dublin just hasn't done it. We have very, very few points of this. And those that are not really facing directly, they're sort of corners of a parcel. And so I guess, you know, fundamentally, that's the flaw in all this to me, despite all the good, again, handsome design, well thought out in a wide variety of ways. But the residential facing the highway is sort of a deal breaker for me in this regard. And unfortunately, puts it in sort of an uncomfortable spot.
Thank you, Mr. Supalack. Ms. Harder.
Application and all the work that you've put into it has some good merits and good things to consider for sure. I do think that just kind of thinking about the project in general is the heavy traffic, the 270. There are a tree line there, but there are power lines. I live close to that area that they come through and clean out the trees very quickly. And then all of a sudden you have if it's raining, it's a little louder. That's just Riverside, not even like 270 talking about. So that is an area that we have to be concerned about. I do like the idea of multifamily. I am concerned about the positioning of it. But that area, that corner is pretty special, and it does need something that is going to kind of carry it and be sustainable. And thank you for making the connection with the walking and the biking and so forth. And I appreciate your comments too about connecting us, that everyone wants to kind of visit every little area and pretty inquisitive about those areas. And so I think that's important. And if that's part of, talking about the streets and so forth, I think that's a conversation. I don't think there's enough open space. The parking is pretty heavy. I understand the numbers, but when you look at it, maybe it's just the look of it to me. Also, just maybe I like the way it looks, but maybe some arches or something of that sort was just like softening the look with something that hit me a little bit. Sound barriers are going to be important with mounds, landscaping, especially with the animal hospital. You want to be a good neighbor to them. And then also maybe having a visit with them prior to the next meeting about their thoughts and so forth too. And then I think, excuse me one second. I am concerned about the building materials. I don't know if you would consider stucco, if that's a possibility, but it's not so much the colors as much as making sure it's the best quality products that would go on that building. And I do like the gable roofs. I like the sidewalks that you're talking about, and again, the connectivity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harder. Mr. Fishman.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much what my colleagues have said. I just have a comment that one of the problems is that we can't believe that every bedroom is going to have one person, okay? And if it has two people, most likely it'll have two cars. So I'm back to the parking situation and the sea of cars. I wonder, what I have seen lately is so many people that are maybe just two people want two bedrooms because where companies are encouraging them to work out of their home, and especially in this kind of environment where it's a workspace, they have workspace downstairs and so on. The type of client, and I'm not the expert, you designed the building, but maybe less units and the same amount of bedrooms or a few less bedrooms, but that units that supply an office space, because I'm hearing that over and over. One person's renting a 2-bedroom apartment because they want, their companies have told them that they'll be working out of their home at least 3 days a week or sometimes forever. So I think of that. I think that you did a great job in design. It's certainly not the typical square building we see with 180 units. But I have some concern, as my colleagues do. I expressed that concern before about something facing the highway. And I actually made, I think I mentioned this before, some phone calls to people, one person in particular who lives in a place on the highway, and they hate it. Okay, so the trucks at night and so on. So that's a concern. And as I said, it's not really common in Dublin. We try to offer really a high standard of living, no matter where you're living in Dublin. And so that's a worry for me. Parking is certainly a worry. And I think that maybe some reconfiguring as far as the amount of units, the amount of people will be less parking. I think you've done a really great design job. This isn't something that just got thrown on a piece of paper for sure. And I admire that. But as far as the materials, I assume that's slim brick you're going to be using, right? Does anybody have an answer to that? Slim brick? Or is it
Thin
real brick?
Full depth.
It's real brick? Thick brick? Okay, good. That's good. Durability, like my other colleagues, is a question I have. And also, I don't know what the pitch of the roof is, but it looks pretty good. But if it's asphalt, if you drive around in 10 years, asphalt may not be worn out, but it doesn't look very good. And so you said you were going to imitate slate. There are several products that are imitation slate that look pretty good. There's one in Muirfield. It's been there for years and years and years in an area called, it's behind it's in a gated area with condos. I forget the name of it, but that still looks like good slate. So I would really be more enthused about that than asphalt on this big a building that's 4-story high. That's about it so far. I think it still needs some work, but I think you've done a commendable job. But I'm still concerned about parking, materials, and the amount of people jammed into that area. Okay, so
Mr. Fishman, any feedback on the open space?
for sure, you've convinced me just in a short time that the path through the open space, and I think my colleague makes an excellent point that if it's good to look at, there's nothing in the code that says you have to walk through it. And so I think Dublin's green, and so there's plenty of place to walk through it. So you've got a path that goes through it. So I think I'm fine with that. I'd rather see the trees stay than turn it into a playground, you know.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. Mr. Way.
Thank you. Again, I'm going to echo a lot of the comments. It's really a great project. I mean, it's beautiful, the things that you've conceived. I think the whole Tuller Road experience is really, really nice. What I struggle with, and this has already been brought up, is residential right on 270. And if you look at the grades, basically the site is at the same grade as 270. So the building on that side is going to be fully, I know there's some trees in between the site and 270, but that building is going to be really out there and exposed. And so I have concern about just a living environment there on the highway. So in this district where you can do office and residential, it would be so cool to have an office bar that faces the highway and a residential bar that faces Tuller and creates that experience. In an ideal world, if you could do that, that would be phenomenal. I really, you know, as Mr. Suplak said, the last project that came before us that was on 270 residential, I went on the record saying I did an analysis There are no other residential projects on 270 in Dublin. Everything's in Hilliard. And so this is really setting a precedent in terms of how Dublin relates to housing in 270. And so I have a general concern about that. I love the project. It's a challenging site. I'd like to see maybe some more creativity thinking about mixed use and how you put something different towards the highway and still keep that Tulla Road, just the way you have it, because I think it could be very successful. I'm also concerned about the balance of open space and parking. And I feel the site is just, it's either a building or it's consumed by parking. And that's why it'd be really nice to tuck more parking under the building. And I realize there's some challenges with that, and get more site area dedicated to green space, to open space. And I think this idea of usable is right. I mean, the wooded hillside could be a really cool experience, right? But it's one part of the experience of the site and the usable open space. So I think that could be explored some more. But in terms of the project itself as a courtyard, and we don't know what type of building type it is yet, but it's kind of a podium building. I guess I'll call it that. I think, that all it works really nice. You've solved a lot of those problems. I think there's some site problems that need to be solved that aren't solved.
Thank you, Mr. Way. And I will echo quite a bit of what my fellow commissioners said. I know that the intent of the 270 corridor has always been to preserve view areas for business uses. And so that's probably the biggest struggle that you've heard from many of the commissioners this evening. To add a little bit of the complexity to that, the right-of-way for 270 goes all the way to essentially the parking lot. And so if there were ever an expansion of 270, then you're getting closer and closer to a residential use, which is more concerning than getting closer and closer to a business use. And so that's a complexity, again, same complexity, but the waiver that would be required for the 50-foot setback. Again, just a complexity of this type of use on this property adjacent to the highway. On open space, I do struggle a little bit with one portion of, so Mr. Schneer pointed out, it does have flexibility and usability, but the phrase in the code that hangs up is, and I'm going to actually quote it, but so that it properly responds to its unique location, which I think it would, and the needs of the primary users. And so where we do have primary users that are in very dense housing, and we have pocket plazas around the area, on this side of Riverside Drive, which is a pretty intense thoroughfare, we don't have as much amenity space for the primary users. And so that's where I get hung up on the open space if it's a completely passive open space. I also agree, Mr. Supalak, I think, nailed it. The architecture is fantastic. The layout, parking, yes, I think that we have some work to do as far as the distribution of the parking and the count of parking spaces to the number of dwelling units, but you've done an amazing job. We like to say that at this point in time, we'd be with crayons and paper. You guys brought your A game. You were the stellar student in kindergarten who's there drawing, a Monet. So the amount of time and effort that went into this plan, we can see. So thank you for that. But I think that 270, I'm going to echo Mr. Supalak, that's the linchpin, that's the tipping point for me. We haven't done residential along 270. It's not in our community plan, while the community plan calls out preserving that 270 view space for office uses. So that would be my final comment. So as this is an informal review, if I remember my agenda properly, typically we wouldn't, but I'd like to invite you back up and ask if you have any clarity that you'd like on any of the points that we offered this evening.
I thank you for your comments. I understand them. And I also hear the intent that you're thinking upon, the idea of residential on 270 and the precedent that sets is an important decision for you all and for us, quite frankly, too, and for residents of Dublin. And so we'll take that comment very much to heart, no doubt. I do think that as far as the open space goes, the one thing that we have talked about is creating a variety of different types of open space and some along the front that could be engaging and places for interaction between residents and non-residents, people walking their dog, people using the bike path. The other space being really an opportunity perhaps for sculpture or other interventions. We don't see it being 100% passive. We would like to make it fun and inviting while preserving the natural character of that space. It's really pretty unique over there. So that's incredibly important to us as well. And I would promise you that we would, make you happy with that. Aside from that, I don't believe I have any questions. I think you're very, on point and understanding, and we'll follow up with Nicole and the rest of the team if we have further conversation, as we have further conversations, I would say. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gore. With that active/passive open space, I think that the dairy fields is a very good example of that passive but active. They have those little art installations along the trail in Dairy Fields, one of the parks, where they installed some pretty unique art pieces, and it is passive, but it is interesting.
I love that space. I completely agree with you. Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you very much. All right.
That's one of my favorite pieces. Have you ever seen it? Going, gone. Yeah.
And thank you again. The effort that went into the project is certainly demonstrative in the application, so thank you. Moving on to our next case this evening, we will hear cases 2 and 3 together. This application is First Watch at 6505 Dublin Center Drive, 22-069 AFDP Amended Final Development Plan. This application is a request for exterior modifications for a building on approximately 2.13 acre site, zoned Bridge Street District, Sawmill Center neighborhood. The site is northwest of the intersection of Dublin Center Drive with West Dublin Granville Drive. The other application is 22-091 Master Sign Plan, which is an application for 2 wall signs for an existing building located at the same address. And Ms. Holt, I will turn time over to you for our case presentations on cases 2 and 3.
Thank you, Ms. Call, for the introduction, and good evening, commissioners. The site is located at the northwest corner of Dublin Center Drive and West Dublin Granville Road, and kind of sits between West Dublin Granville Road and the Lowe's parking lot, as you see here in yellow. The site has quite a long history. It was built in 2003 for the Tumbleweed Restaurant and later became the Mellow Mushroom Restaurant, and it's been vacant for a little over a year now. In 2003, this commission approved a corridor development district application for the restaurant itself and then a conditional use for the outdoor seating. At that time, the Planning and Zoning Commission provided a positive recommendation to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a wall sign with a height variance. And then shortly thereafter, the BZA did indeed approve that height variance for the signs. And that was from 15 feet to 19 feet as the total height for those signs. In 2010, a corridor development district application was brought before the Planning and Zoning Commission, again for minor exterior modifications and replacement of 2 exterior wall signs. And then in 2013, the administrative review team approved a ground sign in addition to the 2 existing wall signs, and that was for Mellow Mushroom at that time. These are the existing conditions. We see the north elevation along Banker Drive and then the west elevation, which faces the private Lowe's entry drive. And then here is the east elevation facing Dublin Center Drive and the south elevation, which faces West Dublin Granville Road. And if you'll note on the south elevation, that arched portion of the parapet is going to disappear under this proposal. The site modifications are minimal, and they include a new 36 square foot concrete walk to a new side door on the west elevation. Also, the abandoned ground sign base is going to be removed and turfed. And then various other site elements are in poor condition, as you might expect after being vacant for a while. These are subject of a recommended condition of approval to address. No other landscaping additions are proposed. Taking a look at the south and east elevations, remember that the south elevation is facing West Dublin Granville Road, and here we see the removal of that curved portion of the parapet. And on both elevations, we see asphalt shingled roof areas being replaced by a dark bronze standing seam metal roof, and then black corrugated metal awnings. And then on the east elevation, 2 windows are being added. That east facade is subject of a transparency waiver request. And per the current Bridge Street District Code, this building most closely resembles the commercial center building type. And for that building type, there's a required minimum ground story storefront transparency of 65%. The applicant is requesting a waiver to permit 16%. With the existing building largely unchanged, staff supports this waiver because the building predates the Bridge Street District Code, and the applicant is also adding these 2 windows, thus lessening the lack of conformance, if you will. Here we see the north and west elevations, and no changes are made to that north elevation facing Banker Drive. Changes that we see on the west, and again, this faces the private Lowe's entry drive. We see the new standing seam metal roof, the corrugated metal awning, and then the door that will be added on the west elevation that correlates to that new sidewalk location. The applicant is proposing various material changes, and only the brick on the parapet will be painted in this proposal. And the color palette is white and gray as shown in the upper left. The other painted areas include the trim, the window frames, gutters and downspouts, and exterior doors in that same dark gray. The existing lighting is proposed to be replaced with the black aluminum cut-off wall sconces as shown in the lower left. 10 fixtures are the total being proposed, and staff has a recommended condition of approval for the lighting. We would like to see that relocated to ground level. The current lighting location doesn't serve any purpose to either light a sign or some other element, and we would prefer to see it at ground level so that it can illumine the walkways and the patio areas. The window frames in the upper right are bronze on the exterior, and we are needing some cut sheets to describe those exact materials. That's a subject of a recommended condition of approval as well. And then the roof material in the lower right is the dark bronze. The applicant is proposing wood and metal tables for the inside-outside patio area. Bar stools are included with that, and the patio floor plan is shown in the middle on the screen here. At the entrances on the west elevation, proposed are 2 reclaimed wood and steel benches. This is also the subject of a recommended condition of approval where staff is of the opinion that a more modern bench would be more appropriate to the architecture as proposed. Moving into the master sign plan request, we're going to change gears here a little bit. There are 2 wall signs that defer to the standard sign code per the Bridge Street District language. And proposed are the black and white with the secondary copy, which reads breakfast, brunch, and lunch. These signs are flush mounted. They're white acrylic channel letter faces with a black during the day and white at night specialty vinyl overlay. And this overlay has a thickness to it. Acrylic is a permitted sign material in the Bridge Street District. And other high-quality materials, such as this dimensional day-night vinyl, can be approved by the commission if appropriate. Taking a look at the individual signs, the south or the front elevation sign is 47 square feet and 19 feet 8 inches high. The east elevation measures 80 square feet and is 20 feet 2 1/8 inch high. Both signs meet the sign requirements, and a recommended condition of approval addresses the need to ensure that that secondary copy does not exceed 20% of the total sign face. We just need to see the math on that. Neither sign meets the maximum permitted height, which is 15 feet. But this is where that master sign plan process comes in, where we can do deviations where they're warranted. The factors that staff feel are compelling in this case include that the building architecture is largely intact, and it is very challenging to find a location for wall signs given where the patio roofs come in. The white parapet with the new paint suggests that the wall signs would be placed in that area. That seems to be a natural location, and staff supports this request. Looking at the waiver criteria for the east facade transparency, all criteria have been met. The amended final development plan criteria have been met or met with the waiver and/or the conditions as outlined in the staff report. And then the master sign plan criteria have also been met or met with a condition. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Holt.
I am so sorry. There is another slide here of the conditions and the recommendations. Again, we are recommending approval of the amended final development plan with the conditions as listed in the staff report here, and then approval of the waiver for the transparency, and then approval of the master sign plan with the conditions in the staff report. And now I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Ms. Holt. Questions from the commission? Mr. Way?
This is probably an obvious statement, but in this package that we provided, it has a landscape plan that isn't aligned with the original landscape plan. So I think the language in here is that we're going back to the original landscape plan. Nothing can change from that, and the things need to be replaced that aren't there. Is that correct?
That is correct. We're using that 2003 landscape plan. We're replacing anything that is dead, dying, or missing.
I just want that on the record.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Way. Any other questions for staff? Seeing none, is the applicant here? Would you like to come up? I don't know if you have a presentation or a statement that you'd like to make this evening, and then we'll turn it over to the commission to ask any questions they may have.
Good evening. My name is Bobby Stewart. I'm the Director of Design for First Watch Restaurants. The address I have is 8725 Pendary Place in Bradenton, Florida. I have brought with me Marty Renaud, our architect, and Nicole Barber, our contact for our IMG, which is our signage vendor.
Thank you. All right. Did you want to come up and?
Hi, my name is Nicole Barber. I'm with Image Manufacturing Group, and we're actually located at 5405 Buford Highway in Norcross, Georgia. I'm here to speak in regards to the proposed sign package. In regards to a couple of the comments that were made were on the tagline for the breakfast, brunch, lunch. It does meet within the 20%, does not exceed, either one of them does not exceed the 20%. And what I'll do is I will go ahead and alter the submittal art to include the call out of the measurements, because each one is actually significantly less than what's technically allowed. And it is strongly recommended for First Watch and their brand in order to identify what their concept is of breakfast, brunch, lunch, since it's something new to this area and it helps identify and drive business. Other than that, the other part of that was the placement of the signs. We would prefer that they are placed on the painted parapet, and because of the architectural difficulties of the site, it's difficult for us to place the signs within the 15 overall height from the grade to top of the signs. And so we have proposed that they are higher and that they are more symmetrical and in line with each other to be more aesthetically pleasing.
Thank you. All right, looking to the commission, anyone have any questions on this for the applicant? Mr. Bay.
I have two questions for you. One is related to the windows that were currently closed that are in the kitchen. That's the elevation that we're talking about being light on transparency. Had you ever thought of opening up those windows also and allowing some light into the kitchen, or is there issues?
We honestly have not, because they are in our kitchen area. And anybody that's worked in a restaurant, the kitchens are not the greatest thing to look at. Unless it's like somebody like me who's been in restaurant design for 25 years and the stainless is gorgeous, but.
I just want to look at the granola pancakes.
I was thinking about it more for light for the staff that are there, that give them some natural light to come in and just make their work environment better. That was a comment. And then the second comment I had is related to the awnings, which I think are a really nice addition. But on the west elevation, you put an awning over the windows that are in the foyer or the lobby. And then there's windows that are next to them that are actually where there's seating, customer seating. You didn't put an awning there, and it's west facing. And I was wondering, wouldn't that be a good place for an awning, because it would block some sun for people sitting at those tables?
It would be, but I'll tell you the thought process with the awnings. On the right side of the building was where the east side of the building, the mellow mushroom sign was lower. And when they removed it, the points of where the signage was, it looks like it was shot with a BB gun. So we covered it with an awning for that section, and then we just copied on the other side to be symmetrical.
Okay, so I'm looking at the west elevation here, right? Go
to the east, please.
Right, I'm talking about on the west elevation. You've got the one awning, and I was saying, had you thought about putting an awning next to that with the other two? Is that the problem area you're saying? Or
no, the only reason we have that one that's over the two is because it's symmetrical to the one that's on the east side.
Okay. Thank you.
We can add another one. That's not.
I just seemed to me that that's where customers are sitting, and it's west facing, and the sun might be pouring in there. I thought the awning would be a nice addition, and it would be consistent to kind of continue the awning across. Just a thought.
Okay.
All right. We, yep.
Just a quick question. The staff's comment on the outside bench area, which to my eye also seemed sort of out of character to a more modern facade. Was there a specific reason for, is that a brand issue, or why that kind of bench?
Those are our brand, those are our brand design benches. The interior of our building design is a urban farm. So we go after the farm urban look, and those benches relate to that design palette.
Would changing those benches be problematic?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Ms. Harder?
Yes, I just had a question about lighting. Is there a way, so there are parts of Dublin that a large illuminated sign is not, you don't see them. And so here you are going to be able to see your sign. And, you know, it's a whole new area for us and things of that way. But I wanted to see if there's a way to make it less bright. Is that something you would consider? Because I understand the spacing of it and so forth is allowable. I'm just checking about the brightness. And then are there some more uplights? And just with change people have done where if you want to go out and eat, you kind of get on your phone and you figure out how to get there. And so that part to me is an easy opportunity. A new change kind of changes signs. So thank you.
Start, because I was going to start with, we are only open from 7 to 2:30 on a daily basis. So night dining is not an option for us. But regards to sign glow.
The material that, the LED material that's used is a standard brightness. It doesn't deviate from standard channel letters that you would see on majority of all businesses. The brightness does not carry so that it is a nuisance to anyone who lives nearby. It's not bright enough to shine in windows.
Any final questions from the commission? All right, thank you very much. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to make a comment on this application, or have we received any public comment via the website? All right, seeing none, we will enter into we will enter into deliberation. We have 3 items to consider. As I have noted, there is only one potential addition to the conditions. Mr. Schneer called out the benches, but that's already covered in the recommendations. Mr. Way called out the potential of adding an awning, and if I understood that correctly, that would be acceptable to you to add an awning over the seating area on the east elevation.
Yes, anything we could do to make it feel more like First Watch, we're more than happy to do it.
Okay, looking to the commission to see if there is additional support for Mr. Way's proposal that we add an additional awning over the seating area. I'm seeing 4. Okay, perfect. All right, if we could have staff make an addition to the 4 conditions that the applicant work with staff to provide an awning on the east elevation over the seating area.
Yeah.
All right, once that is all done, it looks like we have 3 motions. The first one is the approval of the 1 waiver. Do I have a motion for approval of the 1 waiver?
Motion to approve.
Mr. Way, thank you.
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Schneer. Ms. Beal?
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Can't say your name. Schneer?
Yes.
Ms. Call?
Yes.
Mr. Supelak?
Yes.
Ms. Harder? Yes. Mr. Way?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Beal. The next item is to approve the amended final development plan with 5 conditions. By a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Way. Do I have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Schneer. Ms. Beal?
Ms. Harder? Yes. Mr. Way?
Yes.
Mr. Supelak?
Yes.
Ms. Call?
Yes.
Mr. Schneer?
Yes.
Mr. Fishman?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Beal. And finally, I will entertain a motion to approve a master sign plan with 2 conditions.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Schneier. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Way. Ms. Beal?
Mr. Supalack,
Yes.
Ms. Harder, yes. Mr. Way,
Yes.
Mr. Fishman,
Yes.
Mr. Schneier,
Yes.
Ms. Gall.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for coming and spending your Thursday evening with us. We certainly look forward to patronizing the business. And seriously, I dream about those granola pancakes. Thank you. What was that?
The trees of ash.
Oh, that's my husband's favorite. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're cruising through our agenda this evening, so thank you for your diligence and preparation. We are moving on to case 5055 Upper Metro Place, 22-062 CP concept plan. This application is a request for the construction of a 4-story mixed-use building consisting of 175 residential units, 8,400 square feet of commercial space with 211 parking spaces. The approximately 2.5-acre site is zoned Bridge Street District Commercial and is located southwest of the intersection of Upper Metro Place with France Road. Ms. Noble, welcome back this evening, and I will turn time over to you for our case presentation.
Thank you very much. As mentioned, the site is located at 5055 Upper Metro Place. This is a mixed-use proposal, and the application type is a concept plan. This application has been before the Planning and Zoning Commission 2 previous times for informal reviews, and the applicant is officially submitted the first stage in the Bridge Street district process. That would be the concept plan that's identified in this screen. If the applicant were to choose to proceed, the next step would be a preliminary development plan. The site is a 2.5-acre site. It's primarily vacant with the exception of an existing parking area to the corner of the site. The property has frontage along Upper Metro Place and France Road. The site is zoned Bridge Street District Commercial. The surrounding area is primarily hotel uses. You can see Home 2 Suites, Embassy Suites, and the most recent is Town Place Suites. To the south, there is a bank and an office user, and you can see the parking associated with the office user to the south. Some of the discussion that we've had in previous reviews is that the applicant is pursuing to develop the site under the Bridge Street District. The site is also located in the Dublin corporate area, which was a plan that City Council approved in 2018. Both of those 2 special area plans do call for a mixed use area. The Dublin corporate area specifically attempts to identify different users, a variety of users, to an area of town that's primarily office. It also identifies open space as focal points, and it does allow for residential development in focal areas. The applicant, again, is pursuing this development under the Bridge Street District, but we, of course, have implemented policies of both area plans in our considerations. So just to take the commission through the progression of the site, this was the first submission that the applicant presented to Planning and Zoning Commission as an informal review. It did have what I would call an L-shaped building that had a prominent facade along Upper Metro Place. It did transition and continue along France Road. The size of the building has not changed in any of the iterations that the applicant has provided. It's 111,000 square feet roughly. It's a 4-story building. In the first proposal, the applicant was proposing 174 units. These are primarily 1-bedroom units. And in this particular reiteration, there was 13,500 square feet of commercial space, which was predominantly on the first floor. I will say that that was a recommendation that we worked with the applicant to include in the project when we originally started talking to the applicant this use was exclusively residential. So based on both the Bridge Street District and the Dublin Corporate Area Plan, we wanted to see a mix of uses there. The parking for the site has relatively not changed. There's a mixture of parking that's being provided. A predominant amount of the parking is being provided by a garage, which is underneath the building. There's also surface parking that you can see to the south of the building, and the applicant has been continually proposing on-street parking along Upper Metro Place. In terms of comments that were provided by the commission, there was considerable discussion about the mass of this building along Upper Metro Place and the desire to break that facade up. The commission also discussed the location of the open space being to the south of the building, that it felt as if that's private space and would not entice public participation in that open space. And there was a little bit of discussion about on-street parking as well. So in terms of those comments, the applicant did provide a second informal review, which was before the commission in February. In this site plan, the applicant did dissect the building based on the Planning Commission's comments. There's a building that's along Upper Metro Place and a second building along France. The buildings are connected by a corridor. In terms of the open space, the applicant did produce an area of open space that's to the front of the France Road building with a private pool that's located in the center of that space. And again, the parking was primarily unchanged. In terms of commercial uses, the commercial uses were identified in the France Road building and included and will include an eatery, a fitness center, and conference rooms. In terms of comments that the Planning and Zoning Commission provided for this site plan, you did have some comments about the pool, that it's centrally located and perhaps it could be in a more isolated area. You also talked considerably about the open space and what type of active items would be identified for the open space, including public art. And again, parking was discussed as part of that proposal. So tonight we're looking at a concept plan, again, in the first stage of this process. The size of the building and the height of the building remain unchanged. The units are 175 dwelling units. The commercial space is roughly 8,400 square feet with the uses that I previously identified. They're still in what we'll call the France Road building, and literally along France Road, and again include an eatery, a fitness center, and conference rooms. In terms of the pool location, the applicant has relocated the pool to be parallel to the Upper Metro Place building, and allowed the public open space to remain to the east of that area. The parking area has primarily remained the same, and the numeric counts for the parking are relatively the same. Our primary objective with this application is to start to identify not only what the Planning and Zoning Commission had identified as questions, but also start to identify waivers that might be required for the application. And again, start to continue the dialogue with the applicant. Open space was a considerable conversation, so the applicant has provided the following rendering to talk about what they envision for this open space. You can see that, and this has remained consistent in all of their site plans, but there's a step or a grade change as you step up from France Road. There is an outdoor patio space associated with the restaurant use, which will attempt to activate that corner. As you move further into the site, the applicant is providing what I will call a music pavilion, if you will, a sports court, and some gazebos. And then as you further progress upwards towards the Upper Metro Place is the private pool. Parking circulation and counts you can see the general circulation that extends off of Upper Metro Place in a one-way configuration as you move into the site. You can see by the red dashed line the general circulation for parking. The garage is still located, or the access to the garage is still located. It's, if you just, the red arrow, if you go directly under entry, is the location of the garage. In terms of numbers, again, surface parking is approximately 73 spaces. The predominant spaces are the underground parking, and the applicant is still pursuing the on-street parking. And we continue to work with engineering about how that would proceed and how it would look. In terms of open space, this is just a quantitative review of open space. The green would be what the applicant is considering their public open space. The blue is the private pool that we've mentioned. In terms of numbers, the required open space is 35,154 square feet. And at this current configuration, the count is just above 33,000. So we're starting to identify that there could potentially be waivers associated with the amount of open space. And we would like to further this conversation with the commission. In terms of starting to identify types of open space, the applicant has provided a color-coded rendering of their open space. The two predominant types of open space are plazas and pocket plazas. Plazas are identified in the salmon color, and then the smaller areas are in yellow-orangish. But the applicant has started to identify what these spaces look like in an attempt to identify if they meet requirements from the Bridge Street District, specifically size requirements and what will happen in those spaces and proportionality to each other. This is a rendering I believe we've seen throughout all of the reiterations, just as you're standing at the corner of the site looking into where the outdoor dining uses are when you directly as you move up from this location, what you will be looking at. Again, the other activities are further into the center corridor of the building. The applicant has provided some conceptual illustrations, if you will, of architecture. This will proceed as the application furthers, and the applicant would provide more specific information about the architecture as well as the open space. So having said that, staff has reviewed the criteria for a concept plan, assessing that all of the criteria have been met. The two conditions that we're requesting of the commission this evening is the applicant continue to work with the city to refine the open space to determine the requirements of the Bridge Street District. And secondly, that the applicant continue to work with engineering regarding on-street parking to ensure that it's designed and constructed in a manner that, again, meets the Bridge Street requirements. And with that, I'm of course happy to answer any questions, and I know the applicant is present as well.
Thank you, Ms. Noble. And we will handle questions for staff and the applicant separately on this application this evening, this concept plan. So looking to the commission for questions for staff. Mr. Fishman?
I probably missed this, but how much of the parking, the required parking, is satisfied with on-street parking?
Only 17 spaces are proposed for on-street parking.
How much?
17.
17?
Mhm.
Okay.
Other questions for staff? Wow, we're letting you off the, oh, never mind.
Sorry.
Spoke too soon. Missed your way.
This is back to the on-street parking. I know that the details are being worked through, but I just had a quick question about the width of Upper Metro Place. Because I'm looking at the site plan right now, and it looks like you put on-street parking, and it looks like there's 4 lanes or 2 lanes in each direction. Just a quick comment about is there adequate space there to get on-street parking to meet the requirements of the code?
Yeah, if we can invite Mr. Hendershot up.
Good evening. So that's part of the discussions. We're looking at that. I think part of the consideration too is that center left turn lane, if that's really needed. So we're continuing to work with transportation mobility. Maybe there's an option to utilize the existing pavement limits for on-street parking. So those are some of the things that we're currently working through at this stage in the project.
And can you just talk broadly about what the next steps would be? We're at the concept plan right now. So with the preliminary development plan, what engineering would bring forward, and then later in the project?
Right. So, if this project were to advance beyond the concept plan, I think at the preliminary development plan stage, we need to have discussions about if there's on-street parking, finalizing those details or getting to a point of understanding, what are the limits of the on-street parking? Is it on both sides of the street? Is it something where it potentially extends further to the west? So kind of beyond the concept plan stage is the next step in the process. We further those discussions.
The Duplo blocks phase.
Right.
And I assume that part of those discussions will be to get adequate space between the curb and the sidewalk, for
Right.
tree planting, and the standard streetscape.
Yeah, those are all considerations that we'd be looking at as part of this.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. White. Thank you, Mr. Hendershot. Other questions for staff? Seeing some head shakes. So we would welcome the applicant up to the microphone. Welcome this evening. Thank you for your patience as you're the last agenda items this evening. If you wouldn't mind turning the perfect old hat.
Yeah, we're getting really familiar here now. So.
If you could state your name and address for the record, and then we will turn time over to you to either make a presentation or a statement.
Thank you. Dwight McCabe, 7361 Courier Road, Plain City, Ohio. I'm trying to get my second win. This is my third public hearing today since 1 o'clock this afternoon. And I walked in and I'm even looking at someone other than Tammy and saying hi to Tammy. So apologies for that. It's just been a long week. But thrilled to be back. I got to tell you, since we've been here the last time, I can't remember how many people I've said, I think that may have been the best public interaction session I've ever had. And we do this all the time. So I truly want to thank you for the session we had the last time. Completely interactive. This is how we in our side of the industry would love for the world to work. Doesn't mean that it's a pass. It means there is work to be done, and we're working together on it, and very happy to have done that. We think the result of that session is a better project. When we get to it, I'd like to have Mark come up and speak a little bit more to the whole concept of the outdoor space and the kind of complexity of that and the interest of that. Certainly appreciate staff in this last iteration. I think we've come a long way at a lot of points to refine, fire access and pedestrian access. It's just all the issues that have been on the table. We see a light at the end of the tunnel for all those. Very happy that staff has come along with the idea of what it can take to put parking on the street. For us, that's not even so much just the concept of a parking count. It's the idea of the nature of the street, kind of transitioning from what it may be today to what the intent of a Bridge Street zoning really implies. So we think that's important. That shows the activity on the street, particularly when we're trying to commercialize a portion of this project. So very much appreciate that. I think just, parking in general has been a topic from the beginning. We all know this is a really tough site. It's really narrow and there's craziness that you have to do. But as we continue to massage it, those edgy pieces tend to soften, and we think we're getting to where we've got solutions that suit everybody's conditions. So I think, again, we're probably here more to listen to you. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at the whole submittal package. We didn't bring another whole set of pictures of that. I presume Tammy might have some if we want to look at more specifics we still kind of stayed away from the architecture. So, you know, we don't need to talk about that much today. The important thing about the architecture where we stand today is we are committed to having an outdoor space, a balcony space for every single unit. We're committed to having differentiation between the two main buildings, and within the two main buildings, probably even some additional differentiation when we get to the architecture. We're still of the mindset that the building that does come up closer to the street takes on a very street-centric characteristic. So the idea of a more brownstone type of a look, a walk-up kind of a look on the first floor. One of the features, again, that Mark can expound on a bit, is that area, that particular portion of the walk area that gets you from the hotel side of things to the courtyard side of things. The idea, because we have that bit of a width because of the easement, so we can't build up to the street as you would with Bridge Street, really sets up an opportunity for what we're considering an art walk. So you have a movement that you can be off the main sidewalk. There's areas where you can have benches and seating and work with the Art Commission, and you know that can be a tremendous kind of a draw to this area, particularly with folks that are coming into the area and staying in the hotels and interacting with this outdoor space. And that could be permanent installations, those could be variable installations. But again, I think we're going to hear from you. I would like Mark to come up a little bit, though, and preface what moves he made in the courtyard space, because they're pretty dynamic, and we think it's addressed a lot of what you were concerned about, and frankly, addressed a lot of what we may have been concerned about as well. So, Mark, you want mine?
Hi, again. Mark Gastandi, Gastandi Studio, 2125 Sinton Avenue, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45206. Yes, thank you for your previous comments throughout this whole process. It's been a long journey and will continue to be a long journey, I think. I do want to clarify just a couple quick things. One is that and I think it does show in the full packet, there's actually 18 parking spaces for the parallel parking along the street. The overall count doesn't change, but we did shift positions. We recognized the fairly large tree along the south border setback in the surface parking lot and wanted to include a fairly large green island to sort of protect the roots there. And so just transferred some that parking spot to the street parking. The other thing is that currently the plan is based on the idea that the curb did move south, the full required width of the parking space of a parallel park, that we were not taking up any of the existing road width in this current condition, though we certainly would love and appreciate if we could gain some of that space back, if it was determined by engineering that some of the road could be used for parking. That would help considerably in increasing open space, actually, quantities, as well as maybe being a little more effective in terms of the quality of that space. As Dwight mentioned, we are taking advantage of this idea of open space types. You guys have very specific rules in your open types, as I've come to learn over the years. And some of the fun you can have with it, however, is in creating these various types and playing this game between node and circulation and node and maybe subnodes in between where you create pause points and linear movement, all of which should be considered open space, as you had in previous discussions with other applicants about passive versus active space and visual connection and visual experience of a space versus actually interacting in a space. The idea to be able to do both within this public park. I think there's a lot of opportunities for that. So again, creating a linear art walk along Upper Metro, connecting the hotel to this much larger plaza space. And of course, anchor that to the corner of Franz Road and Upper Metro is really sort of the obvious solution. And shifting buildings the way we did created that opportunity. One of the big moves I think we made in this particular open space condition compared to the previous informal presentation, again, was the move of the pool to tie it closer to what is sort of the primary residential entrance where the lobby and lounge is, which makes sense, and pull it away from the public space along Franz Road. And that was, I think, a very good suggestion in the previous presentation. The other thing that was suggested that I really kind of clung to and I thought was sort of the best comment of all the comments, was the idea of, and I think it was from you, Ms. Call, about changing the grade within the open space and bringing in some of that lower level into the heart of this space. And I hope that comes off in the package you have. You don't really see it in these slides, but where the bocce court currently is in a lower level, level with the street. And there are platforms and landscape and circulation that wrap around that at the higher level. But a good portion of this open space is actually down at street level now. It is only a 3-foot height difference, by the way. It doesn't come off in the drawings. It is only 3 feet. So that's not a terrible grade change, but it does actually provide, I think, a great opportunity in doing something more than just a simple flat plane of experience. But yeah, the idea of this building capturing this space, the sense of enclosure, the idea that these two wings, these two buildings, are tied together by a bridge. It's not a corridor as might be described. It is a bridge of residential, so you can walk underneath and through into the surface parking behind, as well as creating even a passageway that links this public space to the south property where the bank currently is, and there's additional open space there that belongs to that property. However that future gets developed, the south of this property, if it gets developed differently, we would hope that tie becomes stronger. So I think that kind of sums up the open space and the differences between this particular presentation and the informal and how we addressed it.
Thank you very much.
We did, and sorry, just real quick, we did also indicate, again, conceptually, of additional parallel parking on the north side of Upper Metro. It's not counted towards our parking, of course. It doesn't technically belong to us, but there was an additional comment about the idea of maybe looking at having parallel parking on both sides of the street as justification for having parallel parking at all. So.
Thank you. Looking to the commission for questions for the applicant. Mark, you look like you're considering. Yay, nay? Okay, all right. Well, thank you. We'd like to offer, if you'd like, any closing statement before we open it up for public comment and for deliberation. Thank you, Mr. McCabe. Is anyone here from the public wishing to make comment on this particular application? Any digital? Okay. All right. Looking back to the commission, Mr. Way, if I could start with you.
The pressure on me. So thanks very much. I opened up this package and it was like, wow, you got there. Obviously we're at concept, so I think the whole shifting of the building that we went through opened up that space. And the way that now the space has been sculpted to be private and public and kind of private. And that middle section is at grade with the sidewalk, so it invites you in. I think it all just works perfectly. And I think it's going to be a really, really great addition to this part of the city and to an area that really needs this kind of activity. So I don't have any real, I think from a conceptual standpoint, you're beyond crayons, right? So that's what we talk about. I have just two small comments other than to congratulate you for listening to everything we said and incorporating it. I'm really interested to see, as you work out the details, what the planted steps are and how they work. I'm still envisioning somebody with a lawnmower going and mowing grass down strips, and I can't come to grips with that yet. But I don't know. I assume you don't know what that is yet, so we'll wait and see. And then the other comment, and we're not really talking about architecture necessarily, but the Upper Metro Place building is a little monolithic right now. I think you've done a lot. You've done things with stepping it and all that, but it's just that's going to be something that needs to be worked on. And I'm sure that you'll get there. So looking forward to the next iteration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Way. Mr. Supelak.
There is a lot that's good here. Again, Dwight, Mark, I appreciate you guys, again, listening to us, modifying things, presenting today. I'm going to sort of echo a number of things, and then I'll sort of draw back to my concerns. Agreed, architecture is early. It leaves a lot to be desired in general, right? It's awaiting a good bit of articulation. Inspiration images are compelling. I think with another layer of nuance and articulation, this could get there. I might also offer, right now, as this design stands, you have a couple of great bookends, right around this space you've created. And those corner nodules, whatever they are, I don't know if you get a twisted element. I don't know if it's a bigger thing, right? I think the bridge can sort of participate in that language, right? You even in one of your inspiration images, there's something that's yellow, that's right, just an accent piece that's yellow. So I'm just encouraging you to see those opportunities to really now take this and go somewhere special with it in general. The open space, I think you're right. This is a compelling little feature to the city, not just your buildings, but a compelling feature to the city at this point. It'll have, right, there's layers to it, there's functions to it, right, there's not just the lower level plaza, but the terraced level, right, that restaurant, whatever it is, will spill out and be engaging. I applaud you guys already with the forethought of, right, can you put an even stage out there and make a sort of music element, because that starts to come with other requirements like power and those types of things that would really bring that to life. But that would be potentially vibrant, right, in an interesting way. The art walk is a compelling sort of interesting feature to this area, right? So there's a lot of really good here. I'm just going to say I'm still generally concerned about, right, some of the gyrations here, some of the parking concerns, right? Some of the coverage speaks to it potentially being overbuilt. Some, right, and if it retracted a little bit somehow, some way, does that relax some of what's occurring here? Even in your open space calculations, right? Some of the spaces aren't quite, they're little connector pieces. We could debate whether they apply towards the calculation or not, right? There's a certain amount of, you're trying to pinch every little corner of it, right? So the overbuilt nature of it, I think, is a little bit problematic. It also leads right towards what Mr. Way touched on, in that you get sort of the monolithic element along I don't even know where we are anymore. Upper Metro Place. Yeah. Yes, it's monolithic, and maybe turning the sort of the bookend that's nearest the corner might start to break that up, but are there other ways to sort of modify that? There's also, this district, for a variety of reasons, is hungry for mixed use, right? And you guys are doing, I'm going to say some of that here. I think there's the way it's drawn, and again, it's early, right? 3,000 square feet of restaurant and 2 of fitness center, and I don't know, maybe a sort of meeting space, that type of thing, right? And of course, you guys got to have some forethought about how all that works. I guess there's a certain amount of, for this restaurant to be successful, is 3,000 enough, right? Does it really want to breathe into that? Could some of the other sort of commercial elements be better served and break up the monolith on the other side? And could there be a little bit more of the commercial space that really starts to work with what's not just on your site, but what's around you, which is, right, some of those folks coming and going, as it was written, are potentially employees from the area or hotel guests from the area, and they're looking for things. They're trying to walk to things. They're trying to find things. So what are those things, and could we do more of them that not just aids you guys, but aids the broader scope? And of course, I think if my math is correct, part of your open space requirement is tied to the units, and of course, if you concede some of those units to a little more commercial space, it's actually a smaller, right? The tether on those is smaller, so you actually down your open space requirement, which starts to relax things a little bit. I don't know what it does to your parking, so forgive me on that. But right, take those as two sides of the coin on the overbuilt quality, and/or does more commercial space help things in a variety of ways, right? The monolithic and/or some of your numeric requirements. There is always. We from time to time, again, we're so early, right? This is going to be a sort of very different conversation. You may have back at the office considered your construction type already, and this is just a general commentary on that, right? It's not historically something that is the purview of planning and zoning, but there is a certain longevity sort of conversation about the construction type and open floor plans as opposed to stick built that can then be modified into the future, potentially into perpetuity, right? Those types of things. So that's a general sort of commentary that all things being considered, all things being equal, we would definitely advocate for consider, right, open plan that can be, obviously the framing into it, as opposed to stick building all of this. And so it's kind of stuck being that way. Again, that's more building code than planning and zoning, but it's just a general commentary that, we'd like to insert here and there from time to time. I feel like I had one or two more specifics that are less important. There is, and this is a question as much for the city as anything else, on the France Road side, you guys have the plaza that goes out there, and it seems to be a little bit stepped up, and then there's the notch in the parcel. So the plaza on the left side right there, but can you show the axonometric from above the corner? It's merely a circulation commentary. That plaza that leaks off the left here goes to a dead end. There's a notch in the property line. Yes, right there, perfect. So that plaza goes to a dead end, and of course has the platform quality to it. That notch in the property line, which I think has something to do with utilities. But is there a way to add, for us to sort of accommodate circulation from that end down, and therein sort of allow more flexibility to that, more inviting if we're considering an open space, those types of things. So that's just general commentary. Just forgive me, I'm long tonight. I don't know that I have anything else. That might be it.
All right, we'll come back to you if we need to. Ms. Harder.
I really appreciate this opportunity. I feel like I am obviously new to this, and it was very nice to open it up and see where you all have come so far. And I do appreciate that. I like the bridge idea, and I'm going to stick to some of my notes here, but because I'll start going on. But basically, I like the bridge idea. I like how you moved it up that way. I am not. I like the idea of the cars, parked along the side, meaning it's going to start to bring in that Bridge Street look, that feel, that bring the traffic down. It will set a tone, I think, for the next persons that come in, and I think we kind of want to do that when we're doing these things. When I look at Franz Road, I drive down there all the time, and I like the idea of seeing people. So I really like how you put, the eating area out that way too. I think about the art. I like that concept. I hope you think about, obviously you're thinking about the Dublin Art Commission, but also Dublin Schools is always being asked to look into things, and they come up with beautiful artwork. And I think that would be a nice opportunity there too. Let me make sure you may have thought about this, but just the plugins for the electric cars to me are important. And maybe thinking about, and I'm just throwing this out there, coming late to the party, but I was on vacation and so there was a dog park, and I took notice to the fact that how that brought so many people together from so many different sites. And the more we can connect people in this community, and I think that's really what they want too. So keeping those kind of thoughts about that too, and any connectability with the bike trails and paths and so forth. But I really think that you said to yourselves, Bridge Street zoning, I'm going to raise the bar. Let's make it special. You're thinking about the trees, you're thinking about opportunities. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harder. Mr. Fishman.
Wow. I regret not being here at the last meeting. I read the minutes over and over, and there was a lot of conversation. A couple of things that didn't seem to get settled is there's not much change in the commercial, which Mr. Saplick just brought up. I think that when we talked about this many years ago about changing the zoning here and making it more commercial friendly, because the big complaint was people in Metro Center had no place to eat and so on. So I agree with everything that Mr. Saplick said. I think that, as I said, you addressed a lot of things in this last meeting, and I really appreciate that. I really regret, as I said earlier, that I wasn't here. But I think we need not one restaurant, but several restaurants in this complex. I think there's a lot of residential on this space, a lot. And I think that I would be looking for more restaurants, more things for people to go, Starbucks and things to go on their lunch hour and so on. And I think one of the goals was the complaints about people that have offices in the Metro Center, that they need commercial space. I also am real concerned about parking. We always are, but I think that you'll deal with that, and that's about it for me. I think that the last meeting was very productive, and you responded, and as said, the big thing I didn't see response to is some in the open space, but the restaurants and more commercial space.
Thank you, Mr. Fishman. Mr. Schneer.
Well, I echo fellow commissioners. I think you've done a great job in being responsive and raising the bar for this area. Metro Center is an area that, as we all know, was once incredibly vibrant. I had offices there for 25 years in 4 different buildings. And this would be a great addition. I think it's great. I reserve judgment, as we all do, with respect to the architecture. On the uses, the live, work, play, Metro, there certainly is a lot of work in Metro Center. And then it's the balance between the other two, the live and play. I'm fine with this use because there's a lot of hotels, there's a lot of that sort of temporary living, but I think the ability to have whatever the future brings with respect to in office, hybrid, virtual, whatever, but the ability to combine, I think that's something that we're looking more towards in Dublin is combining the live work experience. The play part, I'm not going to judge the economics of the project with respect to a 3,000 square foot restaurant, which seems relatively small, but I defer to your expertise with respect to that. On the open space, I did a quick calculation. You're at about 94%, and I'm not hung up on that number per se. If you'd put up the open space amenity slide, I just had one comment. It was it was sort of the view, and I think, yeah, open space amenities. So we've had this issue before. It's not as dominant here, but I'm guessing that you included, well, I'm pretty certain that included in that space is the dining area of the restaurant. So, we always look towards is it open, open to the public versus just open, and it's a fine line. I mean, the pool is not open, nor should it be. I mean, this is an amenity of the project, not a community pool. But if the numbers, I'll just say I'm open, no pun intended, to a broader definition with respect to this project. But I want to note for the record that we may want to come back to, okay, the public is not going to be, sitting at those tables, only the diners. And if that just reserve that fact to bring it up later. Otherwise, I think it's great. I mean, I applaud your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Steer. I will tie us up with my comments. I echo a lot of what was said this evening. I do want to highlight a few things. I think that we've come a long way. You heard comments like raising the bar and that sort of thing. I do want to say, Mr. McCabe, you pointed out this earlier. It's been a collaborative effort and it's been a back and forth. And I think what we're all trying to do is create a project that Dublin can be proud of. And that meets the Bridge Street District Code in an area that hasn't had that code implemented before. And so when we're comparing the Metro Place from many moons ago to a Bridge Street code, it's a very different look. And it's one that we'd like to see grow into more than just this one particular parcel in the area. So I applaud staff specifically, and then the applicant and the commission for looking at this through the lens of Bridge Street rather than through the lens of Metro Place. I think that's sometimes hard to do considering the adjacent parcels. With that being said, I echo the Upper Metro Place building. I understand the brownstone look that you're trying to go to and that the balconies are on the back side, and so that doesn't lend itself to the activation portion along the Upper Metro Place, but something that could, planters or stepping back the frontage of the building, something that allows some articulation, some activation, especially with the on-street parking right there. The inspirational images Mr. Supelak highlighted, I took down a couple of words that he said. They were pleasant and agreeable. I absolutely agree. I especially liked the little circular where you sit and your feet are down in the hole. Just that speaks to the different elevations in your open space. And so a lot of those, I think we're not just with crayons, we're with our Duplo blocks building out this really cool project. The open space, I do struggle a little bit with, and I wholeheartedly agree that some of the non-active spaces, the walkways, especially when you're talking Upper Metro Place, ought to be considered as open space. However, I struggle with the ones that look to me like private. So the yellow, the 745 square foot that is right past the pool, which is private, going under the bridge, which is private, going back to the parking, which it's kind of tucked back there. It kind of looks private. It's not the on-street parking that I would imagine is first used for the business use. And so those little ones I struggle with because they look private. And so counting them for open space is a little bit of a struggle. And if we take those particular ones out, we drop below Mr. Schneer's calculation of 94 and get outside of where I personally would be comfortable. The art feature, I think, is phenomenal. We have a fantastic Dublin Arts Council, and they are remarkable, and they work with all different entities. So thank you for investigating and being willing to participate in such a partnership. And then I also echo the comments about the restaurant. The restaurant does look a little small. I used to still work for the same company, just different location, in that 400 North Metro Place, the one that shares a parking lot with this particular parcel, kind of sandwiched between the Chase Bank, that 400 North, and your parcel. And we can go to Jason's, and we can go to Subway, and Eggaholic closed. And so that there's not much there. Really, we're hitting the Kroger salad bar most of the time. So something else that lends itself, I love Mr. Supelak's comment about building for the future. Recently, we had an application with Valentina's in Bridge Park where they wanted to go bigger, but the interior wouldn't allow them. So having that forward thinking in how you're constructing the building to allow flexibility would be, I think, to everyone's advantage. And then I would echo Mr. Supelak also highlighted, if the open space is a struggle and if the parking, I personally am not a fan of on-street parking. It's never been my favorite, but that's personal opinion and code allows it, so we allow it. But if we could alleviate some of the parking struggle and some of the open space struggle by conforming to the standards, by working together and looking at those Duplo blocks to see if they can fit a little bit differently, I think that I would be more in favor. I think that is about all of my particular comments. Would like to ask the applicant if you seek any clarity or additional details from the Commission's comments this evening. Okay. Thank you, Mr. McCabe. All right, so I will entertain a motion on a concept plan with the 2 conditions as provided by staff. Remembering that concept plan is crayon, so with feedback tonight, we don't have to call out additional that's covered in open space and parking is called out. So if that is acceptable, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Way. Thank you, Mr. Schneer. Ms. Beal.
Ms. Harder,
Yes.
Black,
Yes.
Mr. Way,
Yes.
Mr. Fishman,
Yes.
Mr. Schneer,
Yes.
Ms. Call.
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time this evening. Thank you for spending another Thursday night with us. And here's hoping that your drive is pleasant and your arrival at home is welcome. Thank you. All right, looking to staff. Do you have any communications for us this evening?
This is our only meeting this month, so no more meetings for July for everybody. So enjoy a little break. Council's on a break as well. So just want to remind everyone of that. But we're going to make up for it. In August, council has set aside a joint meeting with all the boards and commissions for August the 31st. So they adapted that when they did their calendar at the beginning of the year. I don't have a topic. The time at this point is 6 p.m. on August 31st, which is a Wednesday. So mark your calendars. Once I know more details, then I will share with the group. But that would be Council, Planning Commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, and Architecture Review Board. So that's all I got.
Council meeting.
I just want to, again, say thank you. Thank you for the documents. They are very much appreciated. I know that they don't just magically appear from elves overnight, so thank you.
Can we all get one of those?
I'm sure we can definitely share that with the group. Yeah. Yeah.
31st.
All right. Any other communications from commission or staff?
So there's that meeting is Wednesday, the 31st, and then we have a meeting the following day. Is that correct? Change your clothes. Don't wear the same thing twice.
Take a shower.
You'll be seeing.
All right.
If it makes you feel better, I have to attend council also on that Monday, so I'll have 3 meetings that week.
You did make us feel better. Thank you. I'll bring you chocolate. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for another fun-filled Thursday night. Meeting adjourned.
In Memphis.
No, but there's getting to be plenty in Dublin.